This show is sponsored by MidasResources.com, your trusted source for precious metals since 1996. Call Midas today at 1-800-686-2237.
Hey, welcome back. Charles Butler Show. Here we are, streaming live. GCN. Hanging out. The Ferguson decision has been rendered. And the Officer Wilson, was not indicted. Now, you know, what strikes me about this whole thing is very simple. I don't care if Officer Wilson was attacked, was punched, he wasn't attacked with a cane. He wasn't attacked with a stick, a gun, what you could consider a lethal weapon, or a screwdriver, what you could consider a lethal weapon. He wasn't. He was an unarmed kid, big kid, but unarmed. And this guy shot him 6 times. He's supposed to be a police officer. What kind of police officer is he? He can't take down a kid with a billy club or a taser. He has to pull out his weapon and shoot him. This thing, in fact, this is the other thing that's upsetting for me. See, because white people don't get this. White people lie on black people. White people lie to protect their own. I've had it happen to me in a case where I was charged by the state's attorney or city attorney for beating a white man with his own cane and stealing his cane. I was actually charged with that. And I had to spend good money for this case to be thrown out. It wasn't even tried. I wanted my day in court. 2 white people lied on me, 3 actually, the victim, and the 2 white witnesses that he had lied and said I hit him with the cane. Now, the police showed up 4 minutes after they were called. That wouldn't happen in a black neighborhood. I was in a white neighborhood picking up my daughter from, she was staying with one of her friends. Happened to be driving a Mercedes S550 when a white man came off the curb and hit my car with a cane. That's what happens in America when you're black. And people go, oh, well, what's the big deal? He just hit your car. Well, it's a $100-something car, one, and it's not his, two. It's my property. And under tort law, when you hit someone else's property or damage someone else's property, it's like doing damage to them physically, period. Law. But see, that doesn't apply when you're black, here in America. And we're not talking 50 years ago. I'm talking 5 years ago that this happened to me. These white people lied to the cops and said that this man was hit. And in the police report, the cops' police report, no marks, no bruises, no contusions. And they see, and in order to try to, put the emphasis on the eyewitnesses, because if they had taken pictures and there were no marks, then that would favor me. So the guy shows up 4 days later at the police station, and no marks, no bruises, no contusions. But the detective, the racist detective, goes and tries to, how do you call it? He tries to, he issues a warrant for my arrest not a warrant, but to pick me up for questioning. To pick me up from my home and stop me from what I'm doing for the day, to deal with this white man, this poor white man who is an ex-window washer who fell off of some scaffolding and broke his back or something. He should have killed himself as far as I'm concerned. I could care less about him. I would spit in his face if I would see him today. I almost spit in his face leaving the court because I've never been arrested in my life. But 3 white people lied on me. So I had to go to court and spend thousands of dollars to prove that they were liars. The Ferguson grand jury is a hoax. How do you find 70%? How can you sit in a town that's 70% black? How can you, in good faith, sit a grand jury that's 70% white. That's what we're talking about here. This reminds me of the Rodney King situation. See, I lived out in Southern California when all that went down. The cops lied on the police report. What they didn't know was that a man was filming the beating from the beginning to the end. If it hadn't been for the videotape, the cops would have walked free. Now, this is not something that's made up in my mind. This is not my opinion. You know, it's a fact. If the white man hadn't filmed them beating Rodney King like a piece of dead meat or a piece of like an animal, the police reports didn't reflect any of that. That's partially why the cops went down. Besides having the videotape, they lied on the police reports. Said he was struggling and he was attacking them, and that's why they kept beating him. A blatant lie. In fact, when they moved the case to Simi Valley, a white enclave outside of L.A., with white flight, where, blacks still aren't welcome out there. I know Simi Valley well. I used to have a buddy who had a company out there in Simi Valley. And whenever I'd go through Simi Valley in the 90s and the 80s, I wasn't very welcome. The police would follow me because I was driving a Porsche, I guess. But, they would follow me not for a block or two, but for the entire time I was there. So I'd pull into a McDonald's or I'd pull into an In-N-Out Burger and sit there, and they'd look at me and I'd look at them. But some of you out there probably feel, oh, that's justified. Why are you in a white area anyway? Well, because, I had some white friends. Some friends who happened to be white, and people I was doing business with who happened to be white and had businesses in Simi Valley. That's why. So, what did the cops say? Or what did the prosecutors say? Or the defense attorneys for the officers say to the white jury in Simi Valley? Who are you going to believe? Me or your lying eyes? That was his closing statement. Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? Well, guess what, people? They believed him instead of their eyes and the evidence. The police lied on the police report, blatantly lied on the police report. Their police reports reflected nothing of what happened that night. I've had the same incidents, the same situation happen to me. Police officer wrote that I hit a man in the crosswalk. Actually, I hit the man in the middle of the block where he ran out in front of my car and got hit. But he felt if I had hit him in the crosswalk, then somehow I would be negligent because there was a pedestrian in the crosswalk. However, if there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk and I have the right of way, guess what? I have the right of way. But see, those laws don't apply in Chicago because Chicago, like other white Democratic enclaves, selectively enforce the law. And that's not a law they enforce, jaywalking, because they allow, pedestrians to jaywalk in the city. And they blatantly jaywalk downtown. In fact, I'm over in Michigan, and a man said he was over in Chicago this weekend. And he was talking about how the people were just jaywalking in front of his car. And he had, he didn't want to stop because the guy in the back might rear end him. Same issue we have all the time. They refuse to enforce jaywalking laws. In fact, Mayor Darley encouraged people to jaywalk. And he said that the police should not enforce jaywalking in the city. How crazy is that? Totally. But let's get back to Ferguson. How do you in good conscience, really, how do you in good conscience see a jury that's 70% white and think that there's nothing wrong with that? And, I'm going to play a couple of clips to kind of help me with this, because this is the thinking of some people, which I'm totally not with, given the experiences that I've had since I was 12 years old with policemen, police officers, and society at large. Because, 12 years old is when you kind of get out from your parents, under your parents' guidance. My parents kind of let me go get haircuts by myself, things like that, trust me, go to the movies by yourself with a group of guys, things like that. And I tell you, it's a different world. And while, I'm no shrinking violet, and while I'm certainly not an apologist for bad behavior, because I think that the rioters are totally misfocused. They should have been rioting over Barack Obama's immigration executive orders. That's what they should be rioting over, the stupid SOBs. But they're stupid. Michael Brown is not a hero. Trayvon Martin is not a hero. No. Their deaths are tragic, yes. But they are deaths that they brought on themselves, and that they could have avoided using the survival tactics that many black men have used over the decades, over the years. I watched my father use them. I've used them to stay alive in America so we wouldn't be assassinated in the middle of the street by a rogue cop. And I grew up in cities where there were really rogue cops, like Detroit, the Big Four, which was only stopped, and their police brutality was stopped when a man killed 4 of the Big Four, and they hunted him down and assassinated him like a dog. But guess what? They disbanded the Big Four. They weren't in our neighborhoods terrorizing people, beating people down. And we're talking about law-abiding citizens. And see, that's the problem that I have with this whole thing. If it's a criminal, I don't have a problem with a cop beating a criminal, abusing a criminal, but they will abuse me. I'm a veteran. I'm a United States naval officer. Not an enlisted officer, not I'm going to say commissioned officer. Special if you're white. Not so much if you're black. You're just another N. If you don't believe me, I have a friend who's a 3-star admiral who showed his ID to the police officers and they handcuffed him. A 3-star admiral. Treated him like he was a boy in the hood. And he filed suit. Unconscionable. A white admiral would never be treated that way. They didn't believe that he was an admiral. It's always amazing what white people believe and don't believe. I'm just telling it like it is. And if you can listen, you cannot listen. But the bottom line is, if your neighborhood, your white neighborhood, was patrolled by mostly black cops, and they were stopping your sons and daughters, and, just having chats. Yeah, we're just going to chat. How would you feel? Whenever I've asked white people that, they say, that I would be pretty appalled at that. It's like when I talk about Jesus. In the Bible it says Jesus was a man of color. He didn't have pearly white skin. He lived in the desert. He was born in Africa. They talk about Israel. Israel's in Africa. Egypt's in Africa. But we can't say that because, Christianity is supposed to have maybe originated in Europe. Hey, we'll take a little break. We'll come back, talk about this Ferguson thing a little bit. So I'm a little hot about it. How do you find a 70% white jury and a 70% black town? We'll figure it out. Charles Butler Show, 800-259-5791.
Martin is also now a civil rights hero, spoken of in the same terms as Emmett Till.
Well, Trayvon Martin wasn't doing anything wrong, but Michael Brown was. That's just
but he certainly wasn't performing any kind of courageous acts, and that's what civil rights leaders did. You can't say Trayvon Martin did anything to be considered a civil rights leader or heroic figure, nor can you say that Michael Brown stealing cigars did.
Joe and Ron, thank you both so much.
Well, see, and that's the problem that we run into, that, people are getting into this thing and they're drawing these analogies and they make absolutely no sense. So they invalidate the real issues out here, the real issues of police brutality, real issues of police misconduct. I wrote a piece and I said, that Officer Wilson probably was a great guy, may have just been having a bad day. But see, you can't have a bad day as a police officer. You can't have a bad day. There's no such thing as oops when you're out there policing. It happened. So what do we do? That's the question. Where do we go from here? And I think that the answer is very simple. They file federal charges, and they go from there. That's the only thing that I can see happening at this point. The reality is, as I said before, if Michael Brown had gotten his fat behind out of the middle of the street, he wouldn't be dead today. He shouldn't have confronted the officer, shouldn't have said anything to the officer. Bottom line is those things happen, and it's unfortunate when they do, but they do. They happen. So look, I want to play a clip from Megan and Joe Hicks, who's supposed to be a civil rights leader of some type, and he's saying that Martin Luther King was turning over in his grave. But we're going to play Hicks. Hicks 01, I think.
Behind the camera say this is justice. Somewhere Dr. King is probably an overused kind of a notion here. But Dr. King has got to be spinning his grave. That's what justice looks like. That tramples on the graves of all the old martyrs of the civil rights movement that really did struggle for real things, real racism, real issues they were trying to overcome. And you got thugs and punks and hoodlums in the street, and you got somebody saying this is justice. This looks very familiar what I remember in 1992. And again in 1965 when L.A. went through its big riots here. Very similar kind of hooliganism and people looting and vandalizing stores and acting, frankly, like idiots.
You know, Ron, as a police officer yourself, as somebody who's worked in law enforcement your whole life, the people say they don't believe in the system. They say that the blacks are targeted more than the whites are in Ferguson, and they've got documentary evidence to prove it, in particular with respect to traffic stops. Okay. There have been couple.
We got it. I mean, you know, Megan's going to go into her thing. Ron Hicks is into his thing. I get all that. But at the end of the day, you're going to tell me that you can only find 3 blacks to be on the police department out of 70 in a 70% black town. Kind of reminds me of Detroit. Kind of reminds me of other places where I've been, where, you know, the police department is white. They don't live there in the city. Chicago, great example. But, you know, Chicago, by and by, we have a pretty decent police force. For the most part. We have a couple of road cops, but for the most part, because see, cops in Chicago, they beat up white people too. Let's bring on Paul from New Jersey. Hey, Paul, how you doing? Hey,
hello,
Paul?
Charles.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I was a little disappointed by your opening. For one, just to provide an anecdote of my family history, out of 8 people in my immediate family, 4 have been mugged, all by blacks. All right, so half my family has been robbed, 3 at knife point, 1 at gunpoint by blacks. Now, when you were reciting the suffering you have to go through as a
wait. So let me stop you right here, Paul. I was talking about a police officer, not a thug, not a black thug. I'm not talking about black or white thugs. I mean, I understand the crime in the black community. I don't live in the black community for that reason. And I don't condone black criminals. I am harder on black criminals because they commit crimes against black people. And what Rudy Giuliani said the other day was absolutely right, absolutely true. I say the same thing, and I've always said the same thing. So, okay, go ahead.
No, I don't believe that from your opening. You were very apologetic towards Michael Brown. Michael Brown, as we know, was involved in a strong-arm robbery before.
It wasn't a strong-arm robbery. That's not called a strong-arm robbery. That's not called a strong-arm robbery. That is a myth.
At his
First of all,
on film, we saw it. And
no, it wasn't a strong-arm robbery.
Yes, it was.
No, it was not. And that's not the
and you're an apologist for crime, Charles.
Hey, Paul,
that's what you're
doing. I'm gonna bring you back. I'm gonna bring you back after the break. But let's keep rolling. Let's keep rolling with this. Charles Butler Show. You know, we talk about robberies. We talk about crime. You know, black people commit crimes. There is no question about that. I'm not talking about criminal behavior. I'm talking about police behavior. Okay, we're coming back. We got Tim Johnson coming on with us, who's from the Frederick Douglass Foundation. He's going to be on with us. And also, we got a caller right now. We're talking to Paul. Hey, Paul, you know, we have time constraints, so, you know, we got to get to the point. Your family was robbed by 4 members of your family was robbed by black guys. I'm sure the police responded to that, and I hope they caught those criminals.
No, they didn't actually.
Well, I hope the police didn't respond.
No, and this is what I'm saying about what aggravates race relations is if a black community has to come out and stand with police every once in a while and against they're criminals. No, they don't.
They do.
Not from the looks of what happened in Ferguson. This fellow attacked Officer Wilson, and Officer Wilson responded. Why? How dare you second guess what that man does?
Let me say this. This is how I second guess that man.
His life.
That man. This is how I second guess that man. For me to think that a black man is going to try to go into a cop's car and take his weapon is ludicrous. One. Two, this is how I second guess that man. As a person, as a person who has shot people, this is how I second guess that man. This boy is going to continue to charge a man who has a gun pointed at him? Please.
Well, look at his record. He went and just goes and bullies an Indian fellow at his store.
Well, did the Indian, listen, let me say this to that.
Shoplifting.
Paul, let me say this to that. Paul, let me say this to that robbery in the store. This is what goes on in those communities, so that you know. Because this hasn't come out. The Indian guy in the store didn't call the police. Now, what these Indian guys do in these neighborhoods is, say you go, like, it happened to me here in Chicago. I go into a store, I bought something that cost $3.25. So I say to the guy said, hey, get something else. I gave him $5. He said, get something else. I said, I don't want anything else. This is all I want. He said, no, I don't have any change. Just pick out something that you want. So I'm like, wait a minute, man. I want my change. You owe me $1.75. He said, well, just take whatever. Take $2. I don't care. Just take. And I'm like, and so this black lady was standing there. She said, he never has any change. This is how they do business. And I started laughing, right? Because I had never ran into anything like this anywhere in the world. So, Paul, I get your point. But for me, when you ask me, this guy, he could have used a billy club. He should have used locking techniques because police officers are trained to take people down. The kid didn't have a weapon. I could see him shooting the kid if he had a screwdriver.
The 6'4" kid.
Yes, the 6'4" kid.
Pounds,
yes,
right. Yeah,
he's not a coward. He's a man. He's a police officer. He's a man. He's not a little coward. Police officers like to fight, like me.
By the way, he's using the force granted to him by law. And he used it successfully against a criminal. By the way, and this is what I'm saying about you, Charles. You're setting a bad example for the rest of the community.
No, I'm not setting a bad example. What I'm standing up as a black man in America who's been harassed by police officers all his life. I don't look like a gangbanger. I've never looked like a troublemaker.
Right.
Like I told you before, I'm a naval officer, and yes, police are racist and they profile. Going to Michael Jordan's house in Highland Park, Illinois, in a Mercedes. I was pulled over like a number of their other guests because the white cops were profiling black people in Highland Park, Illinois. That's a fact, sir. Next caller, please.
Hello?
Go ahead. Got a call from Montana.
Charles.
Yeah, man.
Hey, would you have felt the same way if that had been a black cop?
Yes. No question. No question. He's got an unarmed person. I don't care if it's black or white. See, I just told you that. I don't care if it's black or white, Rich.
Listen,
the guy was unarmed.
Listen, Charles, given the same situation, I don't care if it was a cop or say it was me.
But no. There's a difference between you.
I'd have pulled the trigger.
There's a difference between you. Wait a minute. There's a difference between you, untrained professional, and a man who's empowered.
No, there's not.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Well, how can we have this discussion? How can we have this discussion if you don't understand that there is a difference between a trained police officer and a citizen? As a citizen, you and I we are held to a different level of self-protection than a police officer. Are you crazy?
Not the way I look at it, no.
Well, that's the way you look at it. That's not the way a trained police officer is the only person in our society that we empower with policing, what do they call it? Policing,
powers.
Policing
powers.
And wait a minute, let me finish. I'm going to give it to you. Let me finish. They're the only people that can kill somebody without due process. Now you take it.
You know what? There's times I listen to you and I agree with you, but there's times that you're ranting now in your show over this. I'd like to see the same outrage with you when cops out shooting the white guys.
Well, that doesn't happen.
It does happen, Charles.
It doesn't happen.
Get out there and start investigating.
I looked at the day. Listen, I haven't just started looking at these kind of incidents. I lived in San Diego, and San Diego's a majority white town, 8% black. I had white friends when I would come to work. When I would come to work in a white neighborhood called Rancho Bernardo, and the cops knew me after a while. They knew I was driving a Porsche, so they didn't hassle me. But this is the deal. And plus, I knew the police chief. Hold on, wait a minute. And plus, I knew the police chief. But more importantly, my friends who lived in a white neighborhood, this cop pushed his pregnant wife down. And he and I used to talk about, his name was Mick O'Rourke. And Mick and I used to talk about police brutality, police hassling me, because I was a young guy with a Porsche. And, he was like, Charles, it's not that. You must have been speeding. No, I didn't get a speeding ticket. Guy said he wanted to know how much my car cost. So when he pushed his pregnant wife down and he went to court and sued, he said, he said, I couldn't understand what you have been talking to me about for the last 3 years. He said, I would never thought that a policeman would treat me this way. Well, see, as a black man, I know better. I know that and it's not just white cops. Black cops do the same thing to black people. And this is the difference.
Here's what's going to happen, and I think there's a message being sent here with all this stuff. Whether it was the Trayvon Martin deal.
I didn't like either one of those.
No,
I don't like either one of those. I don't put Trayvon.
Wait a minute. Or whether it's this Michael Brown deal. I think the message is being sent in this country with Obama and Holder and all these people that if you're white, boy, oh boy, don't dare under any circumstances pull a gun on a freaking black guy because
that's not true. You know what? You know what? At the end of the day, I can tell you for a fact. I don't like Obama. I don't like Holder. I think that Michael Brown, like I said from the beginning, if Michael Brown had got his fat ass out of the middle of the road and he shouldn't have been in the middle of the road in the first place, he wouldn't have been in that situation with the cops.
Because what that freaking communist Obama and his cohort Holder are doing is they have set this country back, in my opinion. And I'm a child of the 60s. I was born in 57. And I'll tell you what, they have sent this freaking country back decades in all this stuff. And
in terms of racial racism, I don't think so, but this is what I think. I don't agree with him. I don't agree with him, Rich. I don't agree with him. And I don't agree with Obama and Holder and anything that they do and anything that they've done.
Your own problems.
No, anything. This is what I think. This is what I think. This is what I think, Rich, and I believe this with all my heart. I think that Obama is race baiting. I think Holder has race baited. I think if they were going to do any protest, these people, these black. Let's say that.
Blacks are too stupid to see it.
Richard, this is the other thing. These aren't all blacks who are out here doing the protesting. It's just like Rodney King.
Granted, I'll give you that. In Ferguson, a majority of the people down there that are instigating everything are freaking communists out of Chicago.
You're right. You're probably right. But look, this is the deal. I don't agree with Holder.
Charles,
I don't agree with Holder. I don't agree with Holder. I don't agree with Obama and what they're doing. And this is the other thing, Richard. I don't think that Trayvon Martin or Michael Brooks Brown are the kind of cases that we throw out there as police abuse. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying to you is, and I'll say to anybody else, that in a town that's 70% black, you go sit a jury that's 70% white. I got a problem with that. Just like I got a problem with a town that's 70% black being run by all white people. I have a problem with that. I'm sorry.
The way they handled this stuff in Ferguson, Charles, was unprecedented. They did everything. You know what? The blacks in Ferguson were going to riot no matter what.
No, but they weren't in Ferguson. This is where you got it wrong. It weren't the blacks in Ferguson who rioted. It was outside agitators.
Well, okay, then you're
it was outside Athens. It weren't the people of Ferguson. The people of Ferguson were like, hey, you know.
The people in Ferguson then were too stupid to understand the difference.
No. They weren't rioting, man. They weren't stupid. They just said, look, we need to work this thing out. You had the outside edge, like here in Chicago. You have the gangbangers who are supported by the city politicians to keep unrest in the black community. That's a fact. Judge Alito, when we pushed through and got the gun ban lifted on black citizens, basically, because that's where all the crime is. Mayor Daley had all the cops in the white communities keeping crime down, while he allowed crime to run rampant and encouraged gang members to politically control the black neighborhood.
I understand that.
And when I was
from that area of the country, I lived my whole life in that area of the country.
When I was threatened, I used to have my life threatened every night that I worked at WVON almost. And the cops, the only cops that responded and told me to get a gun or to carry a gun and that they would back me were white cops who said, you know, I know that guy right there. I put him in prison for killing somebody 10 years ago. That guy over there, he's a dangerous guy. I put him in jail 15 years ago for killing somebody. They said, Mr. Butler, these people are dangerous. You need to protect yourself, because I was saying the very things that you've accused me of not saying, because I'm black. See, and so, you know, I deal with people like you all the time. I've dealt with people like you all my life. So it's not important to me. You know, you need to listen to what I'm saying and not what you think I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, I don't condone Michael Brown's behavior.
How can I misrepresent what you're saying? It's what you're saying.
No, you did misrepresent what I'm saying. I'm telling you that cop shot an unarmed man. That's what I'm concerned about. I don't care about the color of his skin.
An unarmed man was trying to grab his gun.
Oh, bullshit. That's bull. He's trying to grab. That's what these cops always say. It's the same old clinical BS. Hey, gotta go. Hey, this Ferguson thing gets upset and gets wound up. I don't care what color the guy was. Bottom line is he's unarmed. He's back. I thought in the back. Justin, do we have Roy back on here? Yeah, he's on the schedule. Okay, we're gonna bring Roy back on here shortly, who's the president of the Numbers USA. You know, when I talk about this Ferguson thing, see, it doesn't make any difference. Everybody wants to, you know, put their own spin on what you say. You know, you can look at my writings at my website at charles-butler.com. In no way and nowhere have I ever condoned the behavior of black criminals. I have always been critical, hypercritical of blacks, law-abiding blacks killing blacks who are criminals. Always. And that's in a upcoming book that I have. You know, all of this stuff in the 60s with these white liberals and their acceptance of black criminals and making cases. And I've done segments about how crazy these white sociologists have been about somehow equating poverty with, what do you call it? Poverty with, what do you call it? Poverty with crime. I was looking at a piece here. Let's see, at 9 o'clock my time. Let's see, 8 o'clock. You're right. Okay, gotcha. Okay, look, this is the deal. We'll bring Roy on when we're supposed to. But as I kind of sit here and think about the kind of conversations we've had today, I don't condone black criminals. I've always said that black criminals, we spend too much time, we spend too much money on incarcerating people. We need to start eliminating people. I mean, taking them out of society. I don't believe in giving felons a second chance before we give people who haven't committed crimes a first chance. I was very critical of Danny Davis's legislation about second chance for felons that he was so proud of that President Bush signed. I was totally against that nonsense. I'm totally discard Eric Holder and President Obama and their race baiting and their inflaming racial issues. I've always done that. So for anyone to accuse me, Charles Butler, of siding with Obama and because I'm black, somehow identifying with Michael Brown. Michael Brown was an effing idiot. An idiot. He just left the situation in a store where these people have the store manager didn't call the police. Now, you sit out there in your little Jack and Jill enclaves and you go, oh, well, he was 6'4", he was 300 pounds, he's a dangerous man. BS. The bottom line is police officers are trained to go deal with that situation. Not like these cowardly Americans today who've never served in the military, who've never had a fight, who are like Obama, and they want to talk their way out of things. No, police officers sign up to do a very dangerous job, which is to go out and police. And that doesn't mean pulling your gun and shooting an unarmed person. Now, those bruises that Officer Wilson has to his face, who knows? They could have staged all that stuff for all we know. They let this man's body lay out on the street for 10 hours. Of course, they were going to have alibi. So instead of planting a gun, like we know police officers do, and I know there are you out there who watch these TV shows and these cop shows, and absolutely nothing in these cop shows is about reality. Like that CIS stuff. That's not about reality. Those groups don't even exist in the FBI. So, that's just to begin with. So, most people, because they've never done anything in their lives, and I mean like done something like of life and death consequences, they have absolutely no idea except what they see in the movies and what they see on television. It's amazing. Oh, I dropped a gun and the gun went off. That's the movies, dummy. I tell you, no wonder a person like Barack Obama could get elected. And as far as crime and blacks committing crime, very rarely, let me be clear, very rarely do blacks commit crimes against whites. Like the stats say, of the crimes that blacks commit, only 14% of those crimes are committed against a white person. Why? Because they know the consequences for attacking a white person are very high in America. That's just a fact. It's Charles Butler Show. We come back, gonna have Roy Beck from Numbers USA on this immigration thing. Riot about the immigration EO.